Alright guys, today I am very excited to bring you this 2010 Mazdaspeed 3. This car has a 2.3 liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, which produces around about 260 horsepower and 280 torques. Those are some pretty impressive numbers for a hot hatchback, and we'll get to that later. The market that we have in America for hot hatchbacks is fairly limited. If you get over in Europe, you've got all kinds of options. Here in the States, not so much. The big three that come to mind are the Volkswagen GTI, the Ford Focus ST, and the Mazdaspeed 3. Now you could say the Fiesta ST, but it's a little smaller and competes in a segment a little bit lower than all of these, so we're just going to stick with those three. Now you may remember that I referenced the Mazdaspeed 3 in my video review of my 2012 GTI. These cars are often compared to each other because it's such a small kind of battlefield that they live on. Thus, it is only fitting that I compare these two . She'll move, that's for sure. This car will move. The first thing I noticed when I got on it was this hissing sound. It's got like a natural blow-off valve that's awesome. Okay, so power delivery on this car. You hit boost at about 3 grand and then it builds and builds and builds and builds, which is really cool. I've got this little gauge right in front of me that starts off at -6 PSI and goes all the way up to 15, and when you're getting on it, it's full up there. Wow, that felt good. What do I think about the interior of this car? It's kind of cheap. The materials that you feel are kind of plasticky and it's not very nice to look at. It's got weird like leather seats, but these psychedelic red patterns on the inserts and on the doors and on the actual like trim. Not nuts about that. The navigation screen is up top, and while it's sort of out of the way and easy to see, I feel like if I didn't have 20/20 vision, it might be an issue. I like the gauges. They're really simple. They tell you what you need to know. I love this boost gauge. I'm sort of nitpicking here. The interior is not what you're paying money for. You're paying money for this awesome engine up here. In stock form, this car would absolutely leave the GTI to 60. It just would. I think it's about a half a second quicker. But I can tell you, it feels about a full second quicker when you're actually getting on it, because this thing hauls. I like how tight the steering is in this car. The pedals seem very close to me. I'm in my driving position. I've got my leg halfway extended, wrists up on the steering wheel, so that's where I like to be. But the clutch pedal seems very high. It's a weird clutch getting used to at first. The engagement is way high up and you don't really expect it. At least I didn't. Haven't stalled it out yet. Okay, so this car's got a really awesome personality. When you're getting on it and you've got the little blow-off valve sound, it's cool, and you just see this PSI gauge dancing up and down. Okay, that was my first experience with the torque steer, and it did fight me a little bit. What happens is you build up the boost and the torque comes in and the wheel jerks, because basically what torque steer is you're forcing so much power and torque through the front wheels, which also are in charge of steering, and naturally they're going to have trouble handling both. So that power causes the car to go one way that you aren't intending it to go, and therefore you have to wrestle it. What Mazda has tried to do is limit this by implementing a few systems into the car, which prevent it from doing this. One of them is they actually limit the amount of torque that you receive when you're in first, second, and third gear. You only get the full buttload of it when you get to fourth, fifth, and sixth. Another thing that this car does is it has invasive steering. What I mean by that is when you are turning the car and you are in boost, it decides that it's going to kind of go the opposite way, is what it feels like. It just feels like the wheel is tugging at you, which I don't particularly like, but I understand why they've done it. Mazda has done their best to take a car that has a crazy engine, like a wild person engine, put it in a hatchback that's a practical car, and then sort of make it practical. Have they succeeded in this? Well, just driving around in the half an hour that I've had the car, I think they have. I mean, it feels like a civil car until you get on it and you're just like, oh my God, this is a hatchback that I'm driving. Styling-wise, the Mazdaspeed 3 is definitely a car that people argue about. Some say it's really not attractive and has a dopey smile. Some say that they like a happy car in a world of just angry-looking cars. I kind of have mixed opinions on the look of this car. I think that the front end looks like Falco from Super Smash Bros. And Star Fox, super cheesin'. And I think that the rear end of this car looks fantastic. I love the taillights. I really like the spoiler. From the rear doors back, this car is phenomenal, and I really like the integrated exhausts too. I'm just not nuts about the front end. One thing I have had a little bit of trouble with on this review is the shifter. It's the gears are very close together, and what that means is it can be a little tricky to find where you are in the gears. So I've had a couple times where I've been trying to shift from second to third, and I've accidentally shifted into fifth. Once you get used to the shifter though, it's very nice because it's a precise shifter and rewards you for quick changes. I know earlier in the review I complained about the clutch being a little weird, but now having spent a little bit longer with it, it's good. I really like the release point because you can kind of pop off the clutch and it just engages. Let's have a little bit more of that power, shall we? The road just sort of like, and you think you're in this crazy boosted car, but you're in a hatchback. This is why these cars are great, and I wish these companies would put out more in America. In Europe, they are huge, and I truly believe that they're catching on. I was just reading an article about how the Mazdaspeed 3 actually went away. Mazda stopped making it with the most recent generation. But there's a concept car that is going to be out later this year, and that is going to be very cool, and it's something that I think this market really needs. I think we should have a discussion about power, especially in a car like this. I think that this car, as it stands, is perfect. I think that the amount of power that this engine generates is exactly what you need. It's exactly enough to have fun. And that's part of the reason why my GTI has about the same horsepower now. I did some modifications to it to get it to this place because it was a little slow before, but now it feels comfortable. The way that the market is going now, though, we've got hatchbacks, we've got hot hatchbacks, and then we've got hot hatchbacks. Volkswagen's coming out with an R400 that has 400 horsepower. Ford has their new Focus RS, which is crazy horsepower numbers too. The Mazdaspeed 3 that comes out will no doubt be over 300 horsepower. And it's like, what point do we stop? What point does it become so crazy that they're not enjoyable anymore? Final verdict. If you lined up this car with the Volkswagen GTI, it would absolutely win in a straight line. I can't speak for how well it would do on a track, especially given the fact that the Volkswagen has an option for a dual clutch gearbox, which is just quicker. Which car's nicer? Interior wise, the Volkswagen is. Which one's nicer to drive? I think the Volkswagen's nicer to drive, but I don't think it's more fun. I think this car has a lot more personality. I think it's more rewarding when you are on the limit and really sort of getting into it. I want to thank the owner of this car for letting me have it for the afternoon. I want to thank you guys for continuing to support through season 2. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys next time.